go right ahead, get into the All-Star voting. Now, I'm going to show my screen, but the guards, like, you can't really see the bottom half of the guards, so I'll just read them off once we get into the guards list. But for the most part, I'm not really surprised with most of, how the fan voting ended up resulting. Now, obviously, in these All-Star games, fan voting plays like one-third of the vote. Like 2/3 of the votes go to other people, like I believe maybe the media and the sports analysts and things like that. And the other 1/3 of it goes to the fans. But I will say that there is a reason why the All-Star voting doesn't go completely to the fans, and that is mainly because of Zaza Pachulia. In, I believe it was like 2017, Zaza ended up getting the second most votes in the Western Conference, and a lot of people were sort of trolling with that because they wanted the Golden State Warriors to have 5 All-Stars in their starting lineup as opposed to 4. And he ended up getting more All-Star votes than Kawhi Leonard, as well as Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis was averaging a double-double, and Kawhi Leonard at the time was the former Defensive Player of the Year. And his numbers in that year were great. This was before the load managing, by the way. But the fact that Zaza ended up getting all of those votes was a big reason why the fan voting doesn't really count as much as it did before. Because, imagine if they put Zaza in the All-Star game. There's no way. But here is the fan voting so far. You have the Western Conference on this side, and you have the Eastern Conference on this side. Jokic is leading in all of the front courts in the voting. Obviously, this is not really a surprise. Kevin Durant also being up there and LeBron also being up there is also not much of a surprise. Now, I will say that the fact that LeBron is, let me just do some math real quick. The fact that LeBron is only 5th in the All-Star voting and not number 1 is rather surprising. This is the first time, I think, in a while that LeBron James has not led in the All-Star voting, both in the start. Obviously, we have to wait to see how the year finishes, but the fact that he's only at number 5 right now in the All-Star voting is very, very surprising. But aside from that, the players that are voted above him, Jokic, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, I 100% agree that they should be All-Stars over LeBron James in this year. Jason Tatum, while a lot of people, they like to hate on Jason Tatum, he's been having a phenomenal year. His numbers look good, the team looks good, and everything around the Boston Celtics is just good. Giannis leading in everyone in All-Star voting is without a doubt the best part about this list, because Giannis is probably the best player in the NBA aside from Nikola Jokic, and definitely not. He is the best player in the NBA aside from Nikola Jokic, in my opinion. And the fact that he has that he's leading all of these All-Stars in the votes is nothing short of impressive, and I am not surprised by this in the slightest at all. And I mean, he's definitely had the right year for it. I don't think there's been a single game that Giannis has played where he shot under 50% from the field, which a lot of people, they really like to underestimate just how ridiculous that is. Now, with the rest of these votings, Anthony Davis and Victor Wembanyama leading in, the big men aside from Nikola Jokic in the Western Conference. That also makes sense. But I will say that the gap from Victor to the next man up, Sengun, is a very staggering gap. I mean, look at that difference. That's almost a 600,000 vote difference between Victor Wembanyama and Sengun. And obviously, now Jalen Williams being here, a little bit underrated, but again, I don't think he deserves to be in the All-Star. Same with Wiggins. Sabonis does not deserve to be an All-Star this year at all, no matter, his numbers are pretty solid, but again, with all of the talent that we're seeing so far from Victor, AD, LeBron, KD, Nikola Jokic, and the rest of the players in the front court as well, not to mention the guards, I'm not surprised with this outcome whatsoever. And Jaren Jackson Jr., I have no idea why he's here. Same with Paul George and Joel Embiid. Paul George is having one of the, if not the worst year of his entire life. He's basically averaging, actually, Tobias Harris is averaging better numbers than Paul George right now. And Tobias Harris was the player that Philly ended up getting rid of in order to get Paul George. Obviously, Paul George signed there, but, getting rid of Tobias Harris increased the cap space, and really, there was no need to have Tobias Harris, but it's starting to backfire for Philly. Joel Embiid being on this list also does not make sense. Joel Embiid is barely playing in these games, and for some reason, he has 170,000 votes. Obviously, I don't agree with this whatsoever. Franz Wagner being in here is rather underrated. I totally respect the fans for voting for France, even though he is injured for the moment. Paolo Banchero, also definitely a worthy inclusion on this list. Now, Karl Anthony Towns getting 1 million All-Star votes. This is exactly what happens when you play well in Madison Square Garden. This is just the results of that. I mean, these are the most All-Star votes that Karl Anthony Towns has ever had in his entire career, and it's all because he's on a big market like the New York Knicks. I mean, the Knicks, they've won, I want to say maybe 8 or 9 games in a row so far, and a big reason for that is because of Karl Anthony Towns. So props to the voters for recognizing his talents and putting him at 3. Obviously, these are subject to change. Now, you can see a little bit of the guards. You can't see all of them. SGA is leading in every single one of the guards in 1 million votes. That is completely respectable. He deserves that. He's leading. He's beating Luka Doncic. He's also beating Steph Curry. Steph Curry is actually losing to Luka and SGA, as well as, surprisingly, LaMelo Ball. Again, very, very surprised that LaMelo hasn't really played in that many games, but I will say that doesn't mean that LaMelo does not deserve to be an All-Star, because he most definitely does. Whether or not he deserves that over Donovan Mitchell, based off of the fan voting, not entirely sure, but LaMelo Ball is an incredibly underrated player, and, well, at least, I guess, according to these fans, he's not that underrated, but the fact that he's leading in the guards is very, very impressive. Now, the rest of the guards, aside from Donovan Mitchell, you have Damian Lillard with 704,000, around that number. You have Jalen Brunson with 477,000. Jesus, I cannot do math, apparently. Trae Young is at 5th with 353,000. Cade Cunningham is at 6th with 247,000. Tyrese Maxey is at 7th with 246,000. A little bit underrated. I think Tyrese Maxey should get a lot more votes than what he does, but I think he should be getting more votes than LaMelo Ball, just based off of, his availability and how he's been playing. But again, LaMelo Ball is very underrated, so I have no problem with LaMelo leading in the All-Stars in the voting. Jordan Poole is at number 8. I don't understand why Jordan Poole is at number 8. He with 164,000. Tyler Hero is at 9th with 125,000. And Derek White is at 10th with 120,000. Obviously, the Boston Celtics and their fans, they have a lot of influence on the front court as well as the back court, because they are big fans of Derek White. And those are the guards for the Eastern Conference. Now for the Western Conference, underneath Luka Doncic is Stephen Curry by a little bit. Steph Curry has 810,000 votes. Next, below Steph Curry, is Kyrie Irving with 503,000 votes. Below Kyrie is Anthony Edwards with 411,000 votes. At number 6 is James Harden with 314,000. Number 7 is Ja Morant with 213,000. De'Aaron Fox is at number 8 with 132,000. Devin Booker is at 9 with 120,000. And Norman Powell is at 110,000, going in at number 10. Norman Powell has been, it's addition by subtraction, really, with the Clippers. It's like what they said. Norman Powell has been phenomenal for the Clippers, and I have no problem with him being at the in the 10th spot for the guards in the Western Conference. So, really, it's not a bad list. I will say that the fans did a pretty good job. Aside from questionable picks like Andrew Wiggins, Jaren Jackson Jr., let's see, who else? Paul George, Joel Embiid. Aside from picks like that, maybe a little bit of Jimmy Butler too. I think Jimmy Butler's a little bit overrated. Let's see, who else? Jordan Poole, not Tyler Hero, and not Derek White. I think those guards are very competent, but for the most part, this list is incredibly valid. Now, again, aside from the players that I just mentioned, I have no problem with this list. I think this is a great list. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Let me know if you guys think that the fans, they voted well so far. Do you guys think there's a little bit of bias going in with some of these players? Because of course there's going to be bias. It's fans and their opinions, and they can be egregious sometimes. But for the most part, I think it holds up really well. Let me know in the comments what's your NBA All-Star starting lineup. Who are the players that you guys voted for? And I'll probably reveal the players that I vote for when I actually do this voting. But for now, that's all that I have in this segment. And now we're going to go ahead and go into the third segment, where I talk about the possibility of Aaron Rodgers playing next year, because it doesn't really seem likely that that's going to happen. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.